Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Science Channel. Tonight, we're stepping into a world that most people pass by without a second thought. Yet it is filled with astonishing design, hidden stories, and ancient survival. We call them shells, but they are far more than beautiful objects scattered along a shoreline. They are homes, shields, records of growth, and masterpieces shaped by pressure, chemistry, and time. Some are built in darkness beneath the sea. Some are polished by living creatures until they shine like porcelain. Some carry clues about vanished oceans, lost worlds, and the animals that once lived inside them. Others have shaped trade, inspired art, and even helped people understand the history of life on Earth. The more closely you look, the stranger and more fascinating they become. Beneath every spiral, every ridge, and every shimmer, there is a story of invention, danger, adaptation, and endurance. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is relax. Let your shoulders soften. Let your breathing slow. And let your thoughts drift as we explore this fascinating world of shells together. Let's begin. Some shells are built by animals that never touch land. When most people hear the word shell, they picture a beach, a tide lime, and a pocket full of sea treasures. But the story begins much earlier and spreads much farther. Countless shell makers spend their entire lives underwater, never seeing sunlight as we know it, never touching sand warmed by the air. Deep below the waves, snails crawl over volcanic slopes, clams bury themselves in cold mud, and drifting creatures build delicate casings in open water. Some live on reefs bright with life. Others survive in darkness, where the sea floor feels more like another planet than part of Earth. The shells that later wash ashore are only the final trace of hidden lives lived far from human sight. That is what makes them so arresting. A shell on the beach is not just a pretty object. It is a message from a world most of us will never enter, yet one that has been busy shaping marvels all along. A shell begins as a liquid, then hardens into armor. A finished shell can seem as permanent as stone, as if it arrived in the world already complete. In truth, it begins as something far stranger and far more alive. The animal inside produces a thin film of material from a soft body part called the mantle. That living tissue releases the ingredients in layers, building outward little by little, while the outer surface is still new and almost tender. What starts as a wet, flexible deposit slowly sets into a rigid wall until it becomes a shield that can deflect bites, waves, and abrasion. It is construction taking place on the skin of a creature no engineer could ever imitate fully. The process never feels mechanical. It feels intimate. The animal is not moving into a house someone else made. It is growing its protection from itself, turning chemistry into architecture. That transformation is one of the quiet wonders of nature, because the boundary between body and fortress is almost impossible to separate. The spiral of a shell can follow mathematical rules found across nature. There is something almost hypnotic about a shell spiral. Even before you know anything about biology, your eye can feel that it is ordered, balanced, and somehow inevitable. That sense is not an illusion. Many spiraled shells expand in a way that preserves the same overall shape as they grow, which means the animal can keep adding new material without redesigning the whole structure each time. The pattern belongs to a deeper family of forms seen elsewhere in nature, from whirlpools to hurricanes to the arrangement of seeds in a flowerhead. That does not make a shell cold or mechanical. it makes it more astonishing. The creature is following biological needs, yet the result echoes geometry that appears across the living and physical world. A child can hold one in the palm of a hand, while a mathematician can stare at it for hours. Few objects unite beauty and law so completely. A shell spiral feels discovered and invented at the same time. Some shells keep growing for an animal's entire life. Unlike an insect shell, which must be shed, a mollusk shell usually stays with its owner from beginning to end. That means growth cannot happen in a sudden replacement. It has to happen at the edge, in a slow and faithful extension of what already exists. As the animal gets larger, the opening widens, the curve lengthens, and new layers are added at the lip. The oldest part remains behind like a childhood preserved in mineral form. If you know how to look, the shell becomes a biography. Its earliest days are still there, buried in the tight inner whorls or the first narrow ridges. Later growth records a larger body, changing conditions, and the passing of time itself. It is one of the loveliest ideas in natural history. The creature carries its own past around with it. Every year leaves a physical trace. Growth is not hidden inside muscles or bones. It is written openly on the outside, where the whole story can be read. Pearls form when a shell-building animal coats an unwanted intruder in smooth layers. A pearl feels like pure luxury, something refined and effortless, something almost too perfect to belong to biology. Yet its beginning is much rougher than its ending. Inside certain shell makers, a tiny intruder can slip between soft tissue and the protective interior. It may be a grain, a parasite, or another small irritant. Instead of surrendering to the discomfort, the animal responds by coating the offender in layer after layer of smooth material. Over time, that defensive act creates a sphere with a glow that humans have prized for centuries. What makes this so captivating is the reversal at its heart. A pearl is not created for beauty. It is created for relief. It is a problem being wrapped until it becomes harmless. That transformation gives it a strange, emotional force. Nature did not set out to make treasure. It set out to soothe a wound. We simply happened to fall in love with the result, which may be why pearls seem so mysterious, even now. Many shells are stronger, lighter, and smarter than human-made materials. At first glance, a shell can look delicate, especially when it fits in your fingertips and rings faintly when tapped. But that impression disappears the moment you understand what it is built to survive. Waves slam it against rock. Predators crush, drill, and pry. Sand scours its surface again and again. And still, many shells endure with a combination of toughness and lightness that engineers envy. They are not solid chunks of mineral. They are carefully arranged composites made from hard crystals bound within organic layers that help stop cracks from racing straight through. In other words, they are designed not just to be hard, but to fail gracefully. A shell can absorb punishment without becoming uselessly heavy. That balance is what makes it feel almost intelligent. Human technology often chases exactly that combination, and nature solved it long ago in tide pools and reefs. When people study advanced materials, they are sometimes learning from structures that a snail perfected millions of years before. Some shells can survive crushing waves that would shatter stone. A rocky shoreline looks beautiful from a distance, but close up, it is one of the most violent places many animals will ever live. Water surges with enormous force. Pebbles tumble like thrown tools. Each retreating wave drags and scrapes with relentless power. And yet in that chaos, shell-bearing creatures hold on. Their survival is not luck. It is design matched to punishment. Shells from wave-battered coasts are often lower, thicker, and more tightly curved than those from calmer waters. Their shape helps spread stress, while their compact form makes them harder to tear away or smash open. Some cling with such force, but they become part of the rock's rhythm, rising and settling with the sea rather than resisting it head-on. That is what makes them so impressive. These are not fragile ornaments waiting to be collected. They are survivors from a mechanical battlefield. Each one has endured impacts that would humble many human objects, then remained fastened to the edge of the world. A shell can record seasons, diet, and even ancient ocean temperatures. A shell is not only protection. It is also a record, laid down in layers so fine that scientists can read them like a slow-moving archive. As the animal grows, chemistry from the surrounding water becomes locked into the structure. Slight changes in temperature, salinity, and food can leave subtle signatures behind, turning the shell into a timeline of the environment it lived through. In some cases, growth bands reflect seasonal rhythms, like summers of abundance and winters of stress. In others, isotopes preserved within the mineral can help reconstruct the temperature of seas that vanished long before humans arrived. That means a shell can outlast its owner and keep speaking. It can tell us what the water was like, how conditions shifted, and even how ancient climates changed across time. Few natural objects are this eloquent. They begin as armor, then become evidence. A collector may admire the color and shape, while a scientist hears something else entirely, the memory of an ocean still whispering from stone. The beach is full of homes, skeletons, tools, and time capsules. A stretch of shore can look casual and familiar, almost ordinary, until you start noticing what lies underfoot. Then the whole place changes. What seemed like scattered fragments becomes a crowded archive of lives and uses. Some shells were once living homes, carried by creatures that built them from nothing. Others are the hard remains of animals now gone, their final structure left behind after the soft body vanished. Some have been reused by crabs, worn by waves, drilled by predators, or carried far from where they formed. Humans have also entered the story, turning shells into jewelry, spoons, fishhooks, ornaments, and ceremonial objects. So a beach is never just a beach. It is a place where biology, history, weather, and chance all gather in one strip of sand. Every shell has arrived there by a different route. To walk that shoreline closely is to step through a museum with no roof, where every small object hints at a much larger world. Some shells are so prized, they once shaped trade and money. It is easy to think of shells as simple, natural curiosities, beautiful perhaps, but too small and too common to influence history. In many places, the opposite was true. Certain shells became objects of value so widely recognized that they moved through trade networks like currency. Cowries are the most famous example. Their smooth surfaces, durable form, and distinctive shape made them easy to count, hard to fake, and widely desired. For long stretches of time, they circulated across parts of Africa, Asia, and beyond as a real medium of exchange. People bought goods, paid obligations, stored wealth, and marked status with them. That is a remarkable journey for something born in the sea. A shell that began as an animal's protection could end up crossing deserts, kingdoms, and markets, carrying human meaning far beyond its biological purpose. It reminds us that fascination with shells is not trivial or modern. People have trusted them, coveted them, and built systems of value around them for centuries. Not every shell comes from a snail or a clam. When people think about shells, they usually imagine mollusks first. That makes sense, because snails, clams, oysters, and their relatives produced many of the forms we know best. But the larger story is far stranger. Nature has invented hard outer coverings again and again in different groups, each built for a different kind of life. Turtles carry a bony case that is part shelter and part skeleton. Armadillos wear flexible armor that works more like a moving shield. Crabs, lobsters, and insects rely on hard outer bodies that protect them in a completely different way from a seashell. Even tiny plankton can build delicate mineral housings that drift through water like microscopic treasure. So the idea of a shell is much bigger than one branch of life. It is one of nature's favorite solutions, repeated in many forms whenever survival demands a wall between a soft living body and a dangerous world. Turtles carry shells that are fused directly to their skeletons. A turtle does not live inside a shell the way a hermit crab does. It grows as part of the turtle itself, in a way that feels almost unbelievable once you picture it properly. The top half, called the carapace, is fused to widened ribs and parts of the spine. The lower half, called the plastron, connects underneath to form a rigid case around much of the body. That means the turtle is not wearing armor. It is built into armor from the inside out. Its shoulder girdle even sits within the rib cage, which is the reverse of what we see in most other animals. This makes turtles one of the strangest body plans among vertebrates. What looks simple from the outside is actually a dramatic rewiring of the skeleton. Every slow step a turtle takes carries that extraordinary design with it, a reminder that evolution sometimes solves danger not by making an animal faster, but by turning its whole body into a fortress. Armadillos wear shells made of bone plates and tough skin. An armadillo looks as though someone imagined a mammal and a suit of armor at the same time, then somehow made both real. Its protective covering is not a shell in the mollusk sense, yet it answers the same ancient problem. How does a soft animal survive in a world full of teeth and claws? The answer, in this case, is a coat of bony plates called osteoderms, covered by tough outer skin and arranged in bands across the back. In some species, those bands allow enough flexibility for the animal to bend, twist, or even roll partly into itself. The result is protection that can move. That is what makes it so impressive. Armor usually suggests stiffness and weight, but an armadillo still digs, runs, and noses through the ground with determination. It carries defense without giving up its life. Seen closely, it feels like a walking lesson in how evolution can make safety practical, not just strong. Crabs borrow empty shells instead of growing their own. Most armored animals make their protection themselves, but hermit crabs follow a stranger path. Their front half is hard and equipped for gripping, climbing, and fighting, while the rear half stays soft and vulnerable. Instead of building a full shell, they solve the problem by moving into one abandoned by another animal, most often a sea snail. That turns the shoreline into a real estate market. Every empty shell becomes a possible home, and size matters enormously. Too small, and the crab cannot retreat fully. Too large, and the extra weight becomes a burden. What makes this system so captivating is its opportunism. A creature can upgrade its shelter again and again over a lifetime, changing address whenever it finds something better. In some places, entire communities depend on a steady supply of vacant shells to survive. So an empty spiral on the beach may not stay empty for long. It can become the next crucial home in a chain of borrowed survival. Hermit crabs can fight fierce battles over the best shell. To a hermit crab, a shell is not decoration. It is safety, status, mobility, and survival wrapped into one possession. That is why shell disputes can become surprisingly intense. When one crab finds another carrying a more desirable home, it may test, inspect, and then begin a direct challenge. Some species strike the rival's shell with repeated sharp blows, almost like knocking on a locked door with force. Others grapple and tug, trying to make the owner lose grip or abandon the prize. There is real strategy in it. A crab weighs the quality of the shell, the size of the rival, and the risk of wasting energy on a fight it might not win. Sometimes several individuals gather, waiting for a vacancy, so they can each move into a slightly better fit in sequence. It is an extraordinary scene when you picture it properly. What looks like a handful of scavengers is really a society negotiating property, conflict, and opportunity under constant pressure. A nautilus shell grows in chambers like rooms in sequence. Few natural structures feel as architectural as a nautilus shell. Cut one open and it looks less like an animal covering and more like a spiral building, with chamber after chamber laid out in perfect order. The creature begins life in the smallest space at the center, then adds new rooms as it grows, sealing off the old ones behind it. Each chamber preserves a former stage of life, so the shell becomes both home and history at the same time. What makes this more than a visual marvel is the purpose behind it. Those sealed chambers are not wasted space. They help the animal manage buoyancy, allowing it to rise or sink through the water column with remarkable control. So the shell is not merely armor. It is a floating device, a life support system, and a geometric masterpiece built in one slow expanding curve. That combination of engineering and beauty is why the nautilus has fascinated artists, scientists, and collectors for generations. The animal inside a nautilus only lives in the newest chamber. The most surprising thing about a nautilus shell may be how little of it is actually occupied. Although the spiral contains many chambers, the living animal stays only in the outermost one, right at the growing edge. Everything behind it is sealed off after each move forward. That makes the shell feel less like a house and more like a trail of past lives preserved in mineral form. The older chambers are not empty by accident. They remain useful because the nautilus adjusts gas and fluid within them to help control its position in the sea. In that way, its entire history still serves the present. The creature moves ahead, but it never leaves the past completely behind. It carries earlier stages of itself as a working part of survival. There is something almost poetic in that arrangement. Growth does not erase what came before. It turns former rooms into support, allowing the animal to drift through deep water sustained by every chapter it has already outgrown. Some snails seal their shell shut like a tiny front door. A shell is a strong defense, but an opening in that defense is always a risk. Many snails solve that problem with a structure called an operculum, a hard little plate attached to the foot. When danger approaches, the animal withdraws and pulls that plate firmly across the entrance, closing itself in like a house with a fitted door. The effect is simple, but it changes everything. A predator cannot easily reach the soft body inside, and drying air becomes far less dangerous for species that live in exposed or shifting habitats. Some land snails produce an even more temporary seal during harsh conditions, creating a barrier that helps them wait out heat or drought. That means the shell is not only armor, it can become a chamber of endurance, a place to shut the world out until conditions improve. Once you picture that tiny door sliding closed, the whole animal feels more intentional, more prepared, and far more ingenious than its slow pace suggests. Many clams can close with surprising force when danger arrives. A clam can seem passive when half buried in sand or resting quietly on the sea floor, but that calm appearance is deceptive. Inside the two halves of the shell sit powerful muscles that act like living clamps. When danger comes, those muscles can snap the shell shut with sudden strength, sealing the soft tissues within. For some species, the closure is tight enough to resist predators trying to pry them open. For others, it helps them survive brief exposure when tides retreat or water conditions worsen. The mechanism is elegant because it depends on tension and release. One set of forces opens the shell when the animal is feeding or breathing, and another counters that movement in an instant when protection matters more than access to the world. The change can be startling. What looked still and exposed becomes locked down immediately. It is a reminder that many shelled animals are not motionless by default. They are poised, and their defenses can activate faster than most people ever imagine. Mussels anchor themselves, then let their shells face the surf. A mussel living on an exposed shore has one of the hardest jobs in the shell-bearing world. It cannot simply crawl away from danger, and danger arrives with every tide. Waves hammer the rocks with such force that anything loose is swept off and destroyed. The mussel's answer is ingenious. It produces strong fibrous threads, called byssal threads, that fasten it to stone with remarkable grip. Once attached, it holds its position while the sea does its worst. This is not a temporary arrangement. Whole clusters can spend years in the same place, each individual bound down while still able to open enough to feed from the water around it. Their shells present a narrow profile to reduce drag, and their packed groups help buffer one another from impact. Seen together, they turn bare rock into a living stronghold. A mussel bed is not just a collection of animals. It is a community welded to the coast, surviving by fastening itself directly into the violence. Oysters can build reefs from millions of tightly packed shells. An oyster begins as a single animal fixed to a surface, but over time countless individuals can create something much larger than themselves. As generation settles upon generation, their shells accumulate into rough, layered masses that rise from the sea floor and become full reefs. These structures are not decorative. They transform entire coastlines. Fish hide among the folds, crabs shelter in the gaps, and water moves differently as it passes over the ridged surface. A living reef also filters astonishing volumes of water, because each oyster feeds by drawing it through the body and removing tiny suspended particles. That means a shell here is doing more than guarding one animal. It is helping build a habitat that supports many others. The reef becomes a city of mineral walls and living mouths, growing upward through time. It is one of the clearest examples of how shells can alter landscapes. A single oyster seems modest, but millions together can reshape an estuary. Scallops can swim by clapping their shells together underwater. Most bivalves are not known for speed, which is why the scallop feels almost miraculous the first time you learn what it can do. When threatened, some scallops do not merely close their shells and wait. They swim. By snapping the two shell halves together, they force jets of water out near the hinge, and that sudden burst propels them through the sea in short, lively leaps. The motion is awkward, dramatic, and surprisingly effective. A scallop can rise off the bottom and dart away from danger with a series of claps, turning what seems like a stationary creature into something briefly athletic. This works because the shell is not just a barrier. It becomes a propulsion device, using movement that evolved for closure and turning it into escape. There is something unforgettable about that image. A shell, which we associate with stillness, suddenly becomes part of a fleeing body. It reminds you that marine life often hides startling behavior inside forms we think we already understand. Some scallops have dozens of tiny blue eyes along the rim. A scallop can look simple from a distance, almost like a fan-shaped shell with little obvious life beyond opening and closing. Then you see the edge. Along the mantle sit rows of small, shimmering blue eyes. sometimes dozens of them, watching from the rim like beads of light. It is one of the most unsettling and wonderful sights in the sea, because it instantly changes the animal in your mind. This is no blind, drifting shellfish. It is actively sensing the world all around it. Those eyes help detect motion and changing light, which is crucial when a predator approaches. Instead of relying on one central viewpoint, the scallop gathers visual information from many small organs arranged around the body's edge. That gives it a distributed kind of awareness, very different from our own. Once you know that, the shell feels transformed. The scallop is not just sitting there. It is ringed with vision, quietly monitoring the water through a crown of gleaming points. Those tiny scallop eyes use mirrors instead of ordinary lenses. The strangest part of a scallop's vision is not the number of eyes, but the way those eyes are built. In many animals, sight depends on a lens bending incoming light toward the retina. A scallop does something more unusual. Deep inside each eye, a curved mirror made from tiny crystals reflects light inward. That means the image is formed not mainly by refraction, but by reflection. It sounds almost impossible, as though nature borrowed a trick from a telescope and miniaturized it into living tissue. The result gives the animal a way to detect movement and structure in the surrounding water, helping it react before danger gets too close. Once you imagine dozens of mirror-based eyes flashing at the edge of a shell, the creature becomes unforgettable. It is one of those details that makes the natural world feel more inventive than fiction. A shellfish sitting on the sea floor ends up carrying optics so strange that they still surprise people who study vision for a living. Cone snail shells can hide one of nature's deadliest hunters. A cone shell can be exquisitely patterned, polished, and calm in appearance, the sort of object someone might pick up without a second thought. That is exactly what makes the animal inside so startling. Cone snails are active predators, and some species possess venom powerful enough to paralyze prey almost instantly. They do not chase in the usual way. Instead, they use a modified tooth, like a tiny harpoon, launching it from a proboscis to inject a complex cocktail of toxins. Different cone snails specialize in different victims, including worms, other mollusks, and even fish. In fish-hunting species, the strike can be fast enough to stop a darting animal before it escapes. What fascinates scientists is not only the danger, but the chemistry. The venom contains precise compounds that target nerves with extraordinary accuracy. So the beautiful shell is hiding far more than a snail. It is sheltering a biochemical weapons expert, a patient ambush hunter, armed with one of the sea's most sophisticated attacks. Cowrie shells look polished because their owners keep them glossy. Most shells build their shine and then expose it to the world, where waves, grit, and time gradually wear it down. Cowries take a different approach. The living animal extends its mantle out over the outside of the shell, covering much of the surface with soft tissue while it is active. That mantle helps maintain the smooth, enamel-like finish and vivid coloring that make cowries so striking. In other words, the gloss is not just a property of the shell. It is actively cared for by the animal itself. That detail changes the way you see a cowrie. Its perfect surface is not a lucky accident left behind after growth. It is a maintained appearance, preserved by a creature that carries its own beauty under constant attention. This is one reason cowries became so admired by people across different cultures. They look almost manufactured, as though they were carved and buffed by hand. In reality, the polish is biological, a living shell being continually tended by its owner. The queen conch grows a flared lip as it matures. A young conch shell is already elegant, but maturity brings a dramatic change. As the animal reaches adulthood, the outer edge thickens and spreads outward into a wide, flared lip. That alteration is not merely decorative. It signals that growth has shifted into a new phase, and it changes how the shell functions in the animal's life. The heavier lip can make the shell harder for predators to crack or handle, while also stabilizing the animal as it moves across the sea floor. Visually, it is one of the great transformations in the shell world. A slender growing form suddenly becomes broad, sculptural, and unmistakable. If you know what to look for, you can read adulthood written directly into the shape. That is part of the fascination of shells. They do not hide life stages inside the body the way many animals do. They announce them outwardly. In the queen conch, maturity arrives not as a subtle detail, but as a sweeping architectural flourish. Abalone shells shine with rainbow layers called mother of pearl. An abalone shell can look rough and weathered on the outside, but the inside reveals something completely different. Beneath that dull outer surface lies a luminous lining of nacre, often called mother of pearl, shimmering with shifting greens, blues, pinks, and silver. It feels almost impossible that one shell can contain both a rugged exterior and such brilliance within. The nacre is laid down in countless microscopic layers, creating a smooth, hard surface that protects the animal while also producing that famous inner glow. For people, abalone has long seemed precious because it combines toughness and beauty in one object. For the animal, that shimmering interior is simply part of survival. Yet the result is so mesmerizing that humans have used it in jewelry, carving, musical instruments, and decoration for centuries. Open one in the light, and it seems to hold a private aurora. It is one of the finest reminders that nature often hides its richest spectacle on the inside, not the outer face. That rainbow shimmer comes from structure, not from painted color. The glow inside some shells looks like pigment at first, as though nature simply brushed on iridescent color. The real explanation is far more astonishing. In nacre, the shifting hues come largely from structure. Light strikes the countless stacked layers and is reflected in slightly different ways depending on angle and wavelength. Those reflections interfere with one another, producing colors that seem to move and change as the shell turns. That means the shell is not painted blue, green, or pink in the ordinary sense. It is built so that light itself creates the effect. This kind of structural color appears elsewhere in nature too, in butterfly wings and some bird feathers, but in shells it feels especially magical because the material is hard, mineral, and enduring. A piece of shell can seem alive with moving color long after the animal is gone. Once you know the cause, the shimmer becomes even more impressive. It is optics built into architecture, a mineral surface acting like living light. Some shell colors fade quickly once the animal inside is gone. Not every shell keeps its full beauty after death. In some species, the vivid surface patterns people admire are surprisingly fragile, and once the animal is gone, the shell begins a slow decline. Sunlight can bleach pigments. Salt, air, and abrasion can dull the surface. Delicate outer layers may flake away entirely, taking much of the original color with them. That means a shell found on the beach is often only a ghost of what it looked like in life. Freshly occupied shells underwater can be richer, darker, and more vivid than the pale versions washed ashore. This is one reason living shell communities can appear more dazzling than collections made from stranded remains. The colors were not designed to outlast forever. They belong to a working life in a very specific environment. There is something haunting in that. A shell may survive long after its owner, yet still lose part of its identity. What remains is beautiful, but it is also a faded echo of something once brighter. Others keep their patterns for centuries beneath dry museum glass. Not every shell loses its brilliance when life leaves it. Some remain astonishingly stable, holding on to stripes, spots, flames, and intricate color fields for centuries if they are kept dry and protected from harsh light. That durability is one reason old shell collections can still feel alive. A cabinet opened today may reveal surfaces that look almost freshly lifted from a reef or tied flat, even though the animal vanished generations ago. For curators and historians, that makes shells unusual among natural objects. They are not only remains. They are preserved displays of design, carrying pattern across time, with an accuracy that can outlast paper, cloth, and many human-made pigments. There is something almost eerie in that persistence. A shell can sit motionless in a drawer while empires rise and fall around it, still wearing the same marks that once mattered in the sea. It turns preservation into a kind of time travel, with color acting as the messenger. Shell patterns can form through simple rules that create wild complexity. A shell's markings can look so elaborate that they seem hand-painted, as though each zigzag and streak required careful intention. Yet some of that complexity may arise from remarkably simple processes repeated again and again as the shell grows. Pigment is deposited at the edge, where the animal adds new material. If the cells along that growing lip switch on and off in shifting rhythms, the result can become bands, waves, dots, branching lines, or lightning-like shapes. In other words, the shell is not decorated after construction. The pattern emerges during growth, like music produced from a few repeating notes. That is what makes it so mesmerizing. Simple biological rules can generate results that feel almost infinite in variety. You can stare at one shell and see chaos, then stare longer and sense order beneath it. It is a reminder that nature often does not need a long list of instructions to make beauty. Sometimes it only needs repetition, timing, and a living edge. No two patterned shells are arranged in exactly the same way. Two shells from the same species can look immediately related, sharing the same general palette and style, yet the details rarely match perfectly. One may carry a broken stripe where another has a clean band. One may blaze with dark marks near the opening, while another keeps those marks near the older furls. This individuality appears because pattern formation is shaped by growth, chemistry, genes, and the tiny unpredictabilities of life unfolding moment by moment. The rules may be shared, but the final expression is personal. That makes shell collecting so absorbing for many people. You are not simply gathering copies of one design. You are encountering variations on a theme, each one singular. It is much like faces, leaves, or snowflakes. Familiarity exists, but exact repetition does not. There is wonder in that balance. A shell can belong unmistakably to a species, yet still arrive in the world with its own arrangement, its own visual accent, and its own unrepeatable version of beauty. Some shells grow long spines that make predators struggle to bite. A shell covered in long, sharp projections can look extravagant at first, almost theatrical, but those spines are serious equipment. For a predator trying to crush, swallow, or grip the shell, the extra protrusions create immediate problems. They increase the apparent size, make the surface harder to handle, and can force the attacker to bite at awkward angles where leverage is poor. In some habitats, spines may also help steady the animal on soft bottoms by spreading weight across a wider area. So what appears ornate may actually be practical in several ways at once. This is part of what makes spiny shells so fascinating. Their drama is functional. The sea has turned defense into sculpture. Some of the most striking examples look almost impossible, as though they were grown for display rather than survival, yet every spike reflects pressure from the world around them. A predator shapes the shell indirectly, and the result is a weaponized silhouette that can transform vulnerability into difficulty. Others stay smooth, using shape rather than spikes for defense. Not every shell chooses intimidation. Some take the opposite approach and rely on sleekness instead of ornament. A smooth shell offers fewer points for a predator to grip, fewer edges to break, and less drag in moving water or shifting sand. In many cases, rounded curves help spread force more evenly across the surface, making the shell harder to crack than a more elaborate shape might be. This strategy is easy to overlook because it feels understated. There is no dramatic spine, no obvious blade, no theatrical display. Yet that restraint is its own kind of genius. The shell becomes difficult precisely because it is simple. It slips from claws, resists chipping, and moves efficiently through the environment. Nature does this often, refining a form until excess disappears and performance remains. A polished cowrie, a streamlined clam, or a rounded snail shell can all feel almost inevitable once you understand the pressures they face. Defense does not always need to look fierce. Sometimes it only needs to be hard to hold. Limpet shells grip rocks so tightly they can resist prying teeth. A limpet may look like one of the simplest shells on a shore, just a low cone pressed against stone, but that simplicity hides a formidable design. The broad foot underneath acts like a living suction system, tramping the animal to rock with impressive force. When danger approaches, the limpet pulls down harder, sealing the shell edge close to the surface so that teeth, claws, or waves have very little to get under. The shell itself is shaped for this lifestyle, low and compact, offering little leverage to anything trying to pry it loose. On an exposed coast, that can mean the difference between survival and being ripped away in an instant. What fascinates me about limpets is how absolute their commitment is. They do not run. They do not bluff. They become part of the rock. A predator meets not a fleeing animal, but a locked system of muscle, stone, and shell, fused together under pressure. It is resistance reduced to its most powerful form. A limpet often returns to the exact same resting spot. For an animal that seems so plain, a limpet can show astonishing fidelity to place. Many spend part of the tide cycle grazing over nearby rock, scraping microscopic algae with their toothed tongue, then return to the very same resting spot when it is time to hunker down. This is not random wandering followed by accidental arrival. In many cases, the fit is so precise that the shell aligns with a small depression worn or etched into the stone over repeated visits. That home position offers real benefits. It helps the limpet seal more tightly, reduces water loss, and may even lower the chance of being dislodged by waves. What makes this behavior so striking is the contrast between appearance and ability. A creature that seems almost motionless turns out to keep a dependable route and a reliable address on a surface that looks featureless to us. The rock becomes a mapped landscape. The limpet knows where safety lies, and it returns there again and again with quiet accuracy. That home scar can fit its shell like a custom lock. Over time, a limpet's chosen resting place can become more than a favorite patch of rock. It can become a custom seat. Repeated pressure and subtle abrasion help create a shallow depression called a home scar, shaped so closely to the shell's rim that the animal can settle into it with remarkable precision. Once in place, the match helps close gaps at the edge, improving grip and reducing exposure when the tide falls or a predator probes nearby. It is one of the loveliest examples of mutual shaping in nature. The shell adapts to life on the rock, and the rock slowly adapts to the shell in return. Together they create a fitted partnership that makes the animal harder to remove than either element alone would suggest. There is something satisfying about that image. A creature without hands, tools, or blueprint ends up with a residence tailored to its body. It is not a built home in the human sense, yet the fit can be just as exacting. Some shells are thick because waves punish anything built too lightly. On a calm sea floor, a lighter shell may be enough. On a battered shore, lightness can become a liability. Waves turn pebbles into missiles, fling bodies against rock, and grind anything exposed through endless cycles of impact. In those places, many shell-bearing animals evolve thicker walls because the environment selects ruthlessly against fragility. A shell that cracks too easily never gets a second chance. Over time, sturdier forms dominate, trading extra weight for survival under mechanical stress. You can sometimes see this difference within the same species, with individuals from exposed coasts carrying heavier, tougher shells than relatives from sheltered bays. That makes the shell a visible record of hardship. It is not simply a species trait. It can be a response to the violence of a particular home. Every added millimeter of thickness reflects real danger. The sea does not build these stronger shells directly, but it decides which designs endure. The result is architecture shaped by punishment and persistence. Others stay thin because speed matters more than brute strength. A thick shell offers security, but it comes at a cost. Weight slows movement, increases the energy needed to grow, and can become a burden in habitats where quick action matters more than standing firm. In softer sediments or calmer waters, some shell-bearing animals take a different path and remain relatively light. A thinner shell can be produced with fewer materials and carried with less effort. That may allow faster burrowing, easier repositioning, or more efficient growth when danger is best avoided through speed rather than armored endurance. This is one of the most interesting truths about shells. There is no single ideal design. A feature that saves one animal in one setting may hinder another elsewhere. Nature is always balancing trade-offs. A thin shell is not a flawed version of a thick one. It is a different solution to a different problem. Once you see that, the variety among shells becomes even more compelling. Each form is a negotiation between safety, energy, movement, and the demands of place. Burrowing clams use smooth shells to slip quickly through sand. A clam that lives buried must move through sediment that can behave almost like packed resistance. Every awkward ridge, projecting corner, or unnecessary roughness makes that journey harder. Many burrowing clams solve the problem with shells that are smooth, streamlined, and shaped for entry. They use a muscular foot to extend into the sand, anchor, and pull the body downward in repeated strokes. The shell's role in that process is crucial. Its rounded form helps reduce drag, while the two valves protect the soft tissues as grains shift all around them. What makes this so captivating is how dynamic it is. A creature that appears static on a plate or in a display case can, in life, disappear below the surface with startling efficiency. It is not just sitting in the sand. It is engineered for it. The shell acts almost like the outer hull of a burrowing machine, turning a vulnerable animal into something capable of vanishing beneath your feet before you can appreciate the movement. Razor clams can vanish underground faster than a human hand. A razor clam looks narrow and modest when exposed, but the speed at which it can disappear has astonished beachgoers for generations. The animal extends its foot deep into wet sand, swells it to anchor, then pulls the shell downward with surprising force. At the same time, it manipulates water and pressure around its body in ways that help loosen the sediment, making rapid descent easier. The result can be almost absurdly fast. By the time a person reaches down to grab it, the clam may already be well beyond reach. This is not brute force alone. It is technique. The animal exploits the physics of saturated sand, briefly changing the ground around itself so that a creature with no limbs in the usual sense can outdig a human hand. That contrast is what makes the behavior so memorable. Something that looks so passive becomes a master of escape the instant danger arrives. It turns the beach into a stage for disappearing acts performed beneath the surface. Giant clams grow shells large enough to dwarf a suitcase. Most people meet clams in seafood markets or along shorelines, which can make the giant clam feel almost mythical by comparison. Yet in tropical waters, these extraordinary bivalves really do grow to astonishing size, with heavy ribbed shells that can spread wider than many pieces of luggage. Resting on coral reefs, they look less like ordinary shellfish and more like part of the landscape itself. Their scale changes the whole emotional effect of a shell. What is small and pocketable in many species becomes monumental here. A pair of massive mineral doors surrounding a living body. The shell's broad, fluted form helps support that size and provides a stable seat within the reef. To encounter one underwater is to realize just how far a familiar design can be pushed. The humble clam body plan has been expanded until it becomes architectural. Suddenly, the category feels different. A clam is no longer a hidden little digger. It becomes one of the reef's largest and most unforgettable presences. The biggest giant clams can weigh more than 2 people. Size is impressive, but weight gives giant clams a different kind of grandeur. The largest individuals are not merely broad. They are immensely heavy, with shells and body together reaching a mass greater than many pairs of adult humans. That heft matters because giant clams do not roam the reef once settled. They become fixed residents, anchored by size and position, enduring where they grew. Their weight helps them remain stable in a habitat shaped by current, surge, and competition. It also transforms how we imagine the animal. A clam is usually thought of as something small enough to hold. Here, that familiar idea collapses. You are dealing with a shell-bearing creature that becomes part of the reef's structure through sheer presence. There is something wonderful in that reversal. An organism built on the same basic plan as a little beach clam can, under the right conditions, become a living vault of calcium and flesh. Scale takes the ordinary and pushes it into the unforgettable. Giant clams glow with color because algae live inside them. The brilliant blues, greens, and golds seen in the exposed tissues of giant clams are not just decoration for our benefit. Much of that living color is tied to a partnership happening within the clam's body. Tiny symbiotic algae live in its tissues, and their presence contributes to the extraordinary visual display that makes these animals look almost illuminated from within. The clam positions its mantle toward the light, exposing broad surfaces rich with patterns, iridescence, and vibrant tones. This is not the sheen of a shell. It is a living signal of cooperation between 2 very different forms of life. The giant clam provides a protected place to live, while the algae contribute in return through photosynthesis. That relationship helps explain why the clam can sit so openly in clear tropical water, seemingly displaying itself rather than hiding. Once you understand the partnership, the colors become more than beautiful. They become evidence of an alliance, written across the body in astonishing light. Those algae help feed the clam using captured sunlight. A giant clam does not rely only on filtering food from seawater the way many bivalves do. Thanks to its resident algae, it also gains nourishment from sunlight. The algae photosynthesize within the clam's tissues, using light to produce energy-rich compounds, some of which the clam can then use. This gives the animal a hybrid way of living, part shellfish, part solar collaborator. That is one reason giant clams spread their fleshy mantle so widely toward the light. They are not simply exposed. they are harvesting. The reef becomes more than a place to sit. It becomes a platform for light-driven feeding. This changes the whole feeling of the animal. What appears to be a heavy, motionless bivalve is actually participating in one of the most elegant energy exchanges in the sea. It is living partly by sunlight without being a plant. Few facts make shells seem more wondrous than that. A clam, hidden in plain sight, is quietly tapping the power of the sun. Some snails drill perfect holes through other animals' shells. A shell seems like the final word in defense until you discover that some snails specialize in defeating it with extraordinary patience. Predatory snails, such as moon snails and murexes, can bore neat circular holes through the shells of clams, other snails, and various armored prey. The result looks so precise that it can seem machine-made. The predator uses a combination of chemistry and abrasion, softening the target and scraping steadily at one point until the barrier is breached. Then it reaches the soft body inside. What makes this so gripping is the reversal. A shell, which we imagine as a secure fortress, becomes a door that a determined hunter can slowly unlock. On beaches and in fossil deposits, those tiny drilled holes remain as evidence of ancient attacks, a preserved record of predator and prey. You are looking at the aftermath of a siege. That gives even an empty shell new drama. It is no longer only a structure. It is a scene of conflict written in mineral form. Their shells protect them, but their tongues can become power tools. A snail's life can seem built around softness and caution, with the shell acting as the great shield against danger. Yet in many species, the mouth carries a weapon or tool of astonishing effectiveness. The key structure is the radula, a ribbon-like tongue armed with rows of tiny teeth. As it moves, it can scrape algae from stone, rasp plant tissue, or help bore into prey and other hard surfaces depending on the snail's way of life. In some predators, that action becomes part of a highly specialized feeding system capable of penetrating defenses that seem secure. This contrast is what makes snails so fascinating. One part of the body says retreat, shelter, and protection. Another says abrasion, cutting, and relentless persistence. The same animal embodies both vulnerability and mechanical capability. Once you picture that toothed ribbon working back and forth inside the mouth, the whole creature changes in your mind. A snail is no longer merely sheltered. It becomes an operator of natural precision equipment. A snail's rasping tongue can carry thousands of tiny teeth. It is easy to underestimate a snail because nothing about its pace suggests intensity. Then you learn about the radula. This remarkable feeding organ is covered with rows upon rows of microscopic teeth, often numbering in the thousands across the whole structure. They are not teeth in the way ours are, fixed in a jaw and used for biting chunks. Instead, they function more like a moving rasp, passing over food surfaces and wearing them away bit by bit. For grazing snails, that means scraping algae from rock with steady efficiency. In other species, the shapes and arrangements differ to match very different diets. What fascinates me most is the scale of the adaptation. An animal small enough to rest on a leaf can carry a mouthpart packed with more tooth elements than most people would imagine possible. That hidden complexity changes the experience of seeing a snail crawl. Beneath the calm movement is a feeding machine, intricate, specialized, and far more formidable than the shell alone suggests. Shells often combine hardness with flexibility in the same war. A shell can feel rigid as stone when you hold it, yet its real strength often comes from the fact that it is not stone at all. Inside many shells, hard mineral layers are joined with softer organic material in ways that help the structure resist breaking. That means the wall is not just hard. It is cleverly layered so that when stress arrives, cracks do not always race straight through. Energy gets redirected, slowed, and scattered. In effect, the shell behaves like a defense system built from different materials working together. This is one reason shells can survive impacts that would shatter something made from one uniform brittle substance. They are strong because they are mixed. The hard parts resist pressure, while the softer elements help absorb and manage damage. That combination makes shells feel almost paradoxical. They are protective without being simple, rigid without being crude, and far more sophisticated than many people realize when they first pick one up. Engineers study shells to design stronger buildings and materials. A shell may seem like something best suited to a beachcomber's pocket, but in laboratories and design studios, it can become a model for the future. Engineers study shell structures because nature has already solved problems that humans still struggle with. How do you make a material strong without making it unbearably heavy? How do you stop small cracks from becoming catastrophic failure? How do you create forms that resist pressure from many directions at once? Shells offer clues. Their curved surfaces distribute force efficiently, and their layered construction can inspire composites, protective panels, ceramics, and even architectural ideas. This is not imitation in the simple sense of copying a pretty shape. It is more like translation. Designers look at the principles hidden in shells and ask how those rules might work in bridges, helmets, walls, or vehicles. That gives shells a second life beyond biology. A snail's home or a clan's defense can quietly influence human technology, proving that the shoreline is also a classroom. Ancient people turned shells into hooks, knives, beads, and trumpets. Long before metal tools became common, shells offered something precious. They were hard, workable, widely available in some regions, and shaped by nature into forms that invited human use. People carved them into fishhooks, sharpened them into cutting edges, drilled them into beads, and hollowed or adapted larger examples into sounding instruments. This is one of the reasons shells matter so much in archaeology. They sit at the meeting point of survival, craft, and imagination. A shell could help catch food, mark identity, or call a group together across distance. It was not merely found, it was transformed. What I love about this is the intimacy of the relationship. Human hands recognized possibility in natural design and extended it. A curve became a tool, a cavity became a voice, a polished surface became ornament. In shells, ancient people encountered material that was already halfway to usefulness, and from that starting point, they built objects that carried both practical and symbolic power. Some shell trumpets were blown across islands and ceremonial grounds. A large seashell can hold silence when empty, but in human hands, it can also become a signal that carries astonishing distances. In many coastal and island cultures, people used large spiral shells as trumpets, blowing through a cut opening to produce a deep, resonant call. That sound could summon gatherings, announce arrival, mark ceremonies, or travel across water where voice alone would vanish. There is something powerful about that transformation. An object built by a sea creature for protection becomes a human instrument for communication and ritual. The shell's internal spiral and chambered form help shape the tone, giving it a sound that feels ancient and unmistakable. Imagine hearing that call rise over a shoreline before dawn or across a ceremonial ground as people gather. The shell is no longer only a remnant of marine life. It becomes part of social life, memory, and public meaning. Few natural objects have crossed so completely from survival in the sea to significance in human culture. Purple dye once came from sea snails with famous shells. One of the most coveted colors in the ancient world began not in flowers or minerals, but in the bodies of certain sea snails. Species of murex and related snails produced compounds that, through laborious processing, yielded a rich purple dye unlike anything easily obtained elsewhere. The work was messy, slow, and demanding. Vast numbers of snails could be required for relatively small amounts of pigment, which is one reason the finished color became so valuable. This gives shells an unexpected place in the history of status and luxury. Behind the beauty of royal purple lay shorelines, labor, and the lives of marine animals whose shells once marked them as part of a remarkable trade. There is a striking contrast in that story. A humble sea snail, creeping over rocks and reefs, ended up helping color garments associated with power and spectacle. It is one of those moments where natural history collides with human ambition, and the result changes fashion, economy, and symbolism all at once. That dye became so costly, it signaled power and royalty. Once purple from sea snails became established as rare and desirable, it took on a life far beyond color alone. It became a signal. To wear it was to display wealth, access, and sometimes formal power. In parts of the ancient Mediterranean world and beyond, the shade was so expensive to produce that it came to be associated with rulers, elites, and institutions that could command enormous resources. That means a color began acting almost like a language. It spoke before the wearer did. It told observers that the garment represented more than style. It represented status backed by labor, trade, and scarcity. I find that remarkable because the origin never stopped being biological. At the root of all that authority was a marine animal and the chemistry hidden in its body. Human society turned that chemistry into symbolism, and the symbolism became durable. A shell-bearing creature from the sea helped shape the visual vocabulary of power. Few stories show more clearly how natural materials can become social force. Cowrie shells were used as money across parts of Africa and Asia. A cowrie shell is small enough to sit on a fingertip, yet across wide regions it once carried the authority of money. Its appeal as a currency was not accidental. Cowries are durable, portable, difficult to counterfeit convincingly, and instantly recognizable. Their smooth, glossy surfaces and compact form made them easy to handle and count, while their scarcity in some inland areas added to their value. Over time, they moved through trade networks in great quantities, linking coasts, caravan routes, markets, and kingdoms. Goods could be priced in them. Obligations could be paid with them. Wealth could be stored in them. What fascinates me most is how naturally a shell slid into this role. It already felt special in the hand, distinct from ordinary stones or scraps of material. Human societies noticed that and turned a biological object into an economic instrument. So when you hold a cowrie, you are not just holding a shell. You are holding something that once moved through history as value made tangible. Shell beads helped mark identity, status, exchange, and memory. A shell bead may be tiny, but its meaning could be immense. Across many cultures and time periods, shells were pierced, shaped, polished, and strung into ornaments that did far more than decorate the body. They could mark belonging, signal rank, carry memory, and move through systems of gift, exchange, and obligation. Worn at the neck, wrist, waist, or sewn into clothing, shell beads turned marine material into social language. What is so moving about them is that they sit between intimacy and history. A bead touches skin, travels with a person, and can become part of a life story. Yet it also connects that person to trade routes, cultural traditions, and communal meaning. Some beads may have crossed huge distances before being worn. Others may have been made locally from shells gathered nearby. Either way, they reveal that shells were not merely collected for beauty. They were used to say something, remember something, and place a person within a wider human world. Some of the oldest jewelry ever found was made from shells. When archaeologists uncover very ancient shell ornaments, the feeling can be extraordinary. These are not just objects. They are evidence that long ago humans and perhaps other hominins looked at a shell and saw more than usefulness. They saw adornment, symbolism, and perhaps identity. Some of the earliest known jewelry consists of perforated shells that were likely strung or worn on the body, sometimes with traces suggesting deliberate coloring or selection. That means the urge to decorate ourselves with meaningful objects reaches back astonishingly far into prehistory. A shell, shaped by sea and time, became part of the human story of self-expression. I love what that implies. Before cities, before writing, before metalworking, people were already choosing objects that carried beauty and significance, and some of those objects came from the shore. The shell crossed from nature into culture very early indeed. It became part of the moment when humans were not only surviving in the world, but also telling the world something about who they were. Shell middens can preserve meals from thousands of years ago. A shell midden is, at one level, a refuse pile. It is the accumulated remains of shellfish meals left behind by people over time. But to archaeologists, it is far more than discarded dinner. A midden can become a layered record of human life, preserving what people ate, where they gathered it, how often they returned, and sometimes what else happened in the same place. Because shells survive so well, these heaps can endure for thousands of years, growing into mounds that hold traces of daily routine, celebration, settlement, and seasonality. What makes them so compelling is their honesty. They are not monuments built to impress. They are the byproducts of living, and that is exactly why they are so revealing. In broken oyster, clam, or mussel shells, entire patterns of behavior remain visible long after tools, baskets, and voices have disappeared. A midden turns leftovers into testimony. It shows that even waste can become memory when time preserves it carefully enough. Archaeologists read shell piles the way historians read written records. To most people, a heap of broken shells might look repetitive and uninformative. To an archaeologist, it can read like a dense archive. Species composition can show what was collected and favored. Shell size can hint at harvest pressure or changing environmental conditions. Burn marks, breakage patterns, and associated artifacts can reveal cooking methods, tool use, and occupation history. Layer by layer, the pile becomes legible. One level may reflect regular food gathering. Another may signal a feast, a seasonal return, or a period of scarcity. In that sense, shell deposits can function almost like documents written without words. They preserve habits rather than sentences. What I find so wonderful is that this kind of reading depends on learning a different language, one made of fragments, context, and pattern. The shells do not speak directly, yet they say an enormous amount to those who know how to listen. History is often imagined as text, but on many shores it survives instead, as stacked meals turned into evidence. A shell can reveal where ancient people traveled and traded. Shells are powerful clues because they do not belong equally everywhere. Some species come from particular coasts, reefs, estuaries, or ocean zones. When archaeologists find those shells far inland or in regions where the species did not naturally occur, they gain evidence that people moved them. That movement could mean trade, seasonal journeys, gift exchange, pilgrimage, or long-distance social connections that no written record ever described. A bead made from a coastal shell found deep inland can become proof that landscapes were linked by human relationships stretching across surprising distances. Even unmodified shells may tell the same story if they appear in places where nature alone is unlikely to have carried them. This is one reason shells matter so much in reconstructing ancient worlds. They travel well, survive long, and keep their identity clearly enough to reveal origins. A small marine object can quietly expose a large human network. Suddenly, the shell is no longer just a remnant from the sea. It becomes a map folded into matter. Isotope clues inside shells can show the water they grew in. As a shell forms, it does more than build structure. It also incorporates chemical signatures from the surrounding water, including isotopes of elements such as oxygen and carbon. Those signatures can vary depending on temperature, salinity, evaporation, freshwater input, and other environmental conditions. When scientists measure them, the shell begins to reveal the character of the water it once inhabited. That might mean distinguishing between river-influenced estuaries and open marine settings, or tracing seasonal changes as the animal grew. It is astonishing to think that a shell can preserve this information so faithfully. The animal does not intend to keep a chemical diary, yet that is effectively what happens. Layer by layer, its environment becomes part of its body in a form that can survive long after the soft tissues are gone. For researchers, that makes shells incredibly useful time capsules. They are not just shapes from the past. They are preserved records of ancient water, waiting for someone to read what was dissolved there. Some fossil shells still preserve growth lines from long-vanished seas. A fossil shell may seem distant and abstract at first, just a hardened relic from a world beyond imagination. Then you notice the growth lines. Fine ridges or bands still mark the surface, preserving the rhythm by which the animal added material while alive. These lines can survive for immense stretches of time, even after burial, mineral change, and the disappearance of the sea in which the creature once lived. That is what makes them so moving. They are not merely evidence of the animal's shape. They are traces of its pace. Each line marks a moment of continued life, a small increment added in water that no longer exists. When you run your eye across them, you are seeing the rhythm of growth from a vanished ocean made visible in stone. Fossils often impress us because they are old. These lines add something more intimate. They preserve not only age, but process. A sea is gone, a creature is gone, yet the pattern of living on remains. Those lines can record day length in Earth's deep past. Growth lines in ancient shells are not only beautiful. In some cases, they can reveal something astonishing about the planet itself. Certain shell-bearing organisms laid down growth increments in ways linked to daily and seasonal cycles. By counting fine lines within larger annual patterns, scientists can estimate how many days occurred in a year when the animal was alive. That matters because Earth's rotation has slowed gradually over immense spans of time. Far in the past, days were shorter, which means more of them fit into a year. A fossil shell can preserve evidence of that. This is one of those facts that feels almost impossible when you first hear it. A small marine creature living and growing in an ancient sea becomes a witness to planetary motion. Its shell records not only its own life, but the tempo of Earth turning beneath the sun. Suddenly, a fossil is not just a remnant of biology. It becomes a clock face from deep time, still holding marks from a different length of day. Ancient shells help scientists estimate how fast the planet once spun. Earth does not rotate at exactly the same pace forever. The length of the day changes slowly over geological time, influenced by processes such as tidal interaction with the moon. That change is far too gradual for any one lifetime to notice, but ancient shells can help reveal it across vast spans of time. By examining fossil growth patterns that capture daily and seasonal rhythms, Scientists can infer how many days fit into a year during different periods of Earth's history. From that, they can estimate how quickly the planet was spinning. It is a breathtaking idea. A marine animal growing quietly in shallow water hundreds of millions of years ago can preserve evidence of the rotation rate of the whole Earth. The shell becomes a planetary witness. It did not mean to measure anything, yet its life process registered cosmic mechanics in mineral form. Few objects connect the intimate and the immense so elegantly. A shell built for one creature's survival ends up helping humans reconstruct the motion of the world itself. Shell fossils show that oceans once covered places now dry. Finding fossil shells in the dry landscape can be wonderfully disorienting. A hillside, quarry, or desert plain may seem as far from the sea as possible, yet embedded in the rock are unmistakable signs of marine life. These fossils reveal that the place you are standing was once underwater, perhaps a shallow tropical sea, perhaps a muddy seabed or coastal shelf. Over immense spans of time, sediment hardened, water retreated, land rose, and entire environments were transformed. The shells remained as evidence that the world had once been arranged very differently. This is one of the great gifts of fossils. They break the illusion that landscapes are permanent. A farm field, canyon wall, or mountain flank can carry quiet proof of waves, tides, and marine ecosystems long vanished. The shell becomes a contradiction that forces a larger story into view. Dry land is not always ancient land. Sometimes it is former seafloor, lifted and changed, with its old inhabitants still visible in stone. Mountains can hold seashells because continents rise and oceans retreat. Few discoveries feel stranger than finding marine fossils high in the mountains. Yet that strangeness is exactly what makes them so powerful. Shells appear in lofty rock layers because mountains are not eternal towers that always stood above the sea. They are built through tectonic uplift, compression, and the slow heaving of Earth's crust. Sediments laid down on ancient sea floors can be folded, faulted, and raised skyward over millions of years until former ocean beds become part of a mountain range. At the same time, seas can retreat or vanish, leaving their creatures stranded not on the surface, but within the rock record. The result is breathtaking. A shell made by a marine animal can end up overlooking valleys, forests, or snowfields from heights its maker could never have imagined. This is geology at its most humbling. The planet rearranges entire worlds. Mountains are not only rock lifted upward. They are histories lifted into view, carrying old oceans with them. Ammonite shells once drifted through seas above future deserts and farms. Ammonites were among the great shell bearers of ancient seas, coiled cephalopods whose spiraled shells now appear in rocks across the world. During their time, many places that are now dry farmland, rolling hills, or desert plains lay beneath water rich with marine life. Ammonites drifted or swam through those vanished seas, living in habitats that would later become completely unrecognizable. That contrast is what makes them so evocative. A fossil ammonite found in a modern field is not simply a dead creature in stone. It is evidence that the entire setting has been transformed. Beneath crops, roads, or dunes, there was once a seascape where shelled animals moved through open water. Their coiled forms preserve something of that lost world with unusual elegance. Few fossils capture the imagination so immediately. The spiral feels both decorative and alive, easy to recognize and hard to forget. It is like finding a seashell from a vanished ocean embedded in the bones of the land. Their coiled fossils are cousins of the living nautilus. Ammonites are long gone, but their shells still feel strangely familiar because they belong to a broader cephalopod story that has not entirely ended. The living nautilus, though not a direct descendant of ammonites, is a distant cousin within the same larger group of shelled cephalopods. That relationship matters because it helps bridge deep time. When you look at a fossil ammonite and then at a nautilus shell, you can sense a family resemblance across tens of millions of years. Both carry coiled chambers and both speak of ancient experiments in buoyant life within the sea. Yet ammonites were far more varied, flourishing in many forms before their extinction at the end of the age of dinosaurs. The nautilus remains as a kind of echo, not a copy, but a surviving relative that helps make the fossil world feel less remote. A stone spiral from ancient rock suddenly connects to a living animal still moving through modern oceans, and the distance between past and present narrows. Trilobites had hard shells too, but they were not mollusks. When people picture ancient shelled creatures, they often imagine something snail-like or clam-like. Trilobites break that expectation immediately. These long-vanished animals wore hard outer armor, but they belonged to a very different branch of life, closer in broad terms to arthropods than to mollusks. Their bodies were divided into distinct sections, and many species had compound eyes that were astonishingly advanced for their time. Some crept along the seafloor. Some may have swum. Some curled up for protection like tiny armored shields. What makes them so captivating is that their fossilized exoskeletons preserve not just age, but personality. Each species seems to carry its own silhouette and style, from sleek and simple forms to elaborate shapes studded with spines. They remind us that the history of hard coverings is bigger than shells in the usual sense. The ancient seas were full of armored experiments, and trilobites were among the most successful and striking ever to appear. Tiny shell makers called foraminifera helped build whole layers of limestone. Some of the most important shell builders on Earth are so small that millions could fit into a space no larger than a spoonful of sand. Foraminifera, often called forams, are single-celled organisms that make intricate mineral tests, which are shell-like coverings, around themselves. They drift in the ocean or live on the seafloor, and when they die, those tiny structures can accumulate in enormous quantities. Over immense spans of time, layer upon layer of their remains can help form limestone deposits and marine sediments on a continental scale. That is the astonishing part. A creature too small to see clearly without magnification can help build whole rock formations. Their shells are not crude either. Many are delicate, patterned, and geometrically beautiful. This is one of nature's favorite tricks. It gives great consequences to tiny actors. A vast cliff or a thick bed of limestone may owe its existence in part to uncountable microscopic shell makers working quietly through ancient oceans. Chalk cliffs are made from the shells of countless microscopic lives. A white chalk cliff can look pure, blank, and almost abstract from a distance, like a simple wall of pale stone. Yet that dazzling surface is built from the remains of innumerable marine organisms that once floated in ancient seas. Much of chalk comes from microscopic calcareous plates and shell-like structures produced by planktonic life, especially coccolithophores, whose tiny mineral coverings rain down to the seafloor after death. Over time, that soft blanket of remains compacted into rock. The result is breathtaking in scale. An entire cliff face, brilliant under sunlight, can be the compressed residue of countless microscopic lives accumulated grain by grain through deep time. Once you know that, the cliff changes forever in your mind. It is no longer just stone. It is emotion transformed into land, a monument built from tiny bodies that once drifted through sunlit water. The grandeur of the landscape turns out to depend on being so small they were almost invisible when alive. Much of the seafloor is a graveyard of drifting shells. Far from shore, where the ocean seems empty at the surface, a constant rain is falling through the water. Tiny shells, shell fragments, and the remains of drifting organisms sink slowly into the depths, settling on the seafloor over unimaginable spans of time. In some places, that accumulation is so great that the bottom becomes a vast blanket of calcareous ooze made from microscopic skeletons and shell-like structures. It is a graveyard, but not a desolate one. It is dynamic, ongoing, and planetary in scale. Every day, the sea receives more of this quiet snowfall from above. What fascinates me is how hidden the process is. We walk beaches and admire shells, but far offshore the same materials are collecting in silence on a scale beyond ordinary imagination. The seafloor is not just mud and rock. In many regions, it is built partly from former lives drifting down through darkness. The ocean keeps its dead, and over time their shells become part of the planet's skin. Coral sand often begins as shells, chewed, crushed, and recycled. A tropical beach can look pristine and timeless, as though its pale sand simply belongs there by nature. In reality, much of that sand may be the end product of endless biological demolition. Shells, coral skeletons, and other calcium-rich reef materials are constantly broken down by waves, burrowing organisms, and animals that bite, scrape, or grind hard surfaces while feeding. Over time, those larger pieces become smaller fragments, then grains, then fine sand. That means a beach can be less a store of untouched material than a recycling yard in perpetual motion. Every grain may have a history. It might once have been part of a shell wall, a coral branch, or some other hard marine structure. I love the way this reframes the shoreline. Sand stops being anonymous. It becomes the afterlife of reef architecture, reduced, but not erased. A white beach is not only beautiful, it is evidence of constant transformation, where the hard creations of one generation become the ground beneath the next. Parrotfish can grind shell-rich reef rock into fine beach sand. Few animals change a coastline more literally than a parrotfish. With strong beak-like jaws, it bites at algae growing on coral and reef surfaces, and in the process, it scrapes and grinds bits of the hard calcium-rich framework beneath. That material passes through the fish and emerges as fine sediment, contributing to the sands that gather in tropical lagoons and on nearby beaches. The idea is almost unbelievable at first. A brightly colored reef fish helps manufacture beaches by chewing rock and shell-rich reef material into powder. Yet that is exactly what happens. Multiply one fish by many thousands over years and centuries, and the effect becomes immense. A stretch of tropical sand may owe part of its existence to the feeding habits of animals swimming above the reef. This is one of those facts that makes the natural world feel more interconnected than we first assume. A beach is not just shaped by waves. In some places, it is also, quite literally, processed by fish. Waves sort shells by size, shape, weight, and current. A beach may seem random when you first step onto it, but the sea is sorting far more than it appears to. As waves advance and retreat, they move shell fragments according to shape, density, and how easily each piece catches the water. Broad, light shells may be carried differently from dense, rounded ones. Flat fragments may settle where curled pieces continue to tumble. Repeated action can separate materials into surprisingly distinct zones, almost like a natural sieve operating with every tide. This is why careful walkers notice patterns along the shore. Tiny spirals may gather in one band, heavier clam fragments in another, and smooth pebbles somewhere else. The shoreline is being organized by motion. What makes this so beautiful is that no intelligence is directing it, yet the results can look intentional. The sea becomes a patient arranger, grouping objects through countless small pushes and pulls. Once you see that, the beach stops looking messy. It starts to look like an ongoing act of physical selection. That is why beaches often gather shell bands after storms. After a storm, a beach can seem transformed overnight. One stretch of sand that looked nearly bare may suddenly hold a line of shells, wrack, driftwood, and fragments gathered in a narrow band far above the usual tide edge. These deposits form because storm waves carry material differently from ordinary surf. Stronger water reaches higher, suspends heavier objects, and then drops them as its energy changes. The result can be a distinct ribbon of shell remains laid out almost like a mark left by the sea to show how far it reached. For beachcombers, these bands are treasure lines. For anyone paying attention, they are evidence of the storm's sorting power. What fascinates me is how quickly the shoreline can be rewritten. A single night of wind and rough water can rearrange weeks or months of quiet deposition. The beach becomes an event record. In those shell bands, you can almost read the storm's pulse, written not in words, but in what the waves chose to lift and leave. A perfect shell on the shore has usually survived a brutal journey. A flawless shell found on a beach can feel like a gift, almost impossibly delicate and intact. Yet its survival is often the end of a surprisingly harsh chain of events. Before it reached your hand, it may have endured tumbling in surf, grinding against sand, collision with pebbles, exposure to sun, and attacks by scavengers or boring organisms. Many shells never make it through those trials. They crack, chip, fade, or dissolve long before anyone sees them. That is why an unbroken specimen can seem so special. It has come through a gauntlet. What looks serene in a display case may have been part of a violent mechanical journey through the shallows. This is one reason beach finds are so compelling. They are not just attractive objects. They are survivors selected by accident and endurance. A near-perfect shell on the strand is the exception, not the rule. And that rarity gives it an almost improbable beauty, as though chance briefly allowed form to outlast force. Most shells break long before they ever reach your hand. For every shell someone picks up and admires, countless others are lost to the sea's constant rough handling. The moment a shell is emptied, its future becomes uncertain. Waves toss it, sand grinds it, predators chew it, and chemical processes begin to wear it down. Even before washing ashore, many shells are already broken into fragments on the seabed or within the surf zone. Some are reduced to splinters so quickly that they never become recognizable finds at all. This makes every intact shell something of a statistical marvel. It survived not because shells are always durable, but because the conditions happened to spare it a little longer than most. I find that perspective deepens the pleasure of collecting. A shell is not just pretty. It is improbable. It slipped through a world designed to destroy exposed calcium structures and somehow remained itself. The beach is full of evidence of failure, but our eyes are often drawn to the rare success, the fragment that escaped becoming only more sand. The ocean is constantly dissolving, grinding, and rebuilding shell material. Shells may look solid and final, but in the ocean they are part of a restless cycle. New shells are built by living animals every day, while old ones are being worn down, dissolved, broken apart, and incorporated into sediments almost as quickly. Water chemistry matters. So does wave energy, the activity of burrowing creatures, and the appetite of animals that crush or scrape hard materials. Nothing stays fixed for long. A shell can begin as a living defense, become an empty husk, then turn into fragments, sand, sediment, and eventually, perhaps rock. Later, that rock may be uplifted, weathered, and returned to the sea's influence again. What makes this so compelling is the scale. We tend to see shells one by one, but the ocean works on them as part of a vast material cycle, ceaselessly remaking coasts and seabeds. The shoreline is not simply decorated with shells. It is built from them, altered by them, and always in the process of turning them into something new. Some beaches sing underfoot because shells and sand are shaped just right. A singing beach sounds like folklore until you hear it. Under the right conditions, some dry sand produce a squeak, chirp, or even low musical hum when walked upon. This happens because the grains are unusually uniform in size and shape, and because they rub against one another in ways that synchronize the tiny vibrations. In some places, shell-derived carbonate sands play a role in creating these uncanny sounds. The result can be eerie and delightful at once, as though the shore were answering your footsteps. What fascinates me most is that the effect depends on precise physical circumstances. Moisture, grain texture, cleanliness, and movement all matter. A beach that sings is not magical in the supernatural sense, but it feels magical all the same because the explanation only deepens the wonder. Countless tiny grains, many descended from shells, are interacting so perfectly that human walking becomes part of an accidental instrument. The coast turns into acoustics, and the sand briefly finds a voice. Shells can grow thinner when seawater becomes more acidic. A shell is built through chemistry, which means changes in ocean chemistry can alter the finished result. When seawater becomes more acidic, the conditions for producing calcium carbonate become less favorable for many shell-building organisms. One consequence can be thinner, weaker, or less robust shells in some species, especially where the change is sustained or combined with other stresses. That matters because shell thickness is not just appearance. It affects defense, survival, and how well the animal withstands everyday wear. What makes this fact so unsettling is how quiet the process is. A shell may still form, still look recognizable, and still do its job for a time. Yet the structure can be compromised in ways that become critical later. The animal is building in a more difficult world. A subtle chemical shift outside the body changes what the body can make. It is a reminder that shells are never isolated from their environment. They are, quite literally, mineral conversations between organism and sea. Ocean acidification makes shell building harder for many marine animals. For shell-bearing animals, building protection is not simply a matter of effort. It depends on whether the surrounding water provides the right chemical conditions. As carbon dioxide levels rise, more of that gas dissolves into seawater and shifts the chemistry in ways that reduce the availability of carbonate ions needed by many organisms to form calcium carbonate structures. The shellmaker does not stop needing armor. It simply has to work harder to get there, and sometimes harder is too much. Growth may slow, maintenance may become more difficult, and vulnerable stages may suffer the most. This is one of the reasons ocean acidification worries biologists and fisheries alike. It reaches directly into the architecture of marine life. What was once a reliable environmental background becomes more challenging, and the burden falls on creatures whose survival depends on building mineral walls around themselves. A changing ocean does not just alter habitats in a vague sense. It can interfere with the very process by which animals construct their homes and shields. Young shellmakers are often the first to struggle in changing seas. The earliest stages of life are often the most delicate, and for many shell-building animals that is especially true. Larvae and juveniles must begin constructing protective structures while they are still tiny, vulnerable, and energetically limited. If the surrounding water chemistry is less favorable, or if temperature and food conditions add stress, these young organisms may have a harder time forming strong early shells. That can affect whether they survive predators, settle successfully, or make it into adulthood at all. What makes this so important is that trouble at the beginning can ripple through entire populations later. Adults may still be present for a time, giving the illusion that everything is stable, while the next generation quietly struggles to replace them. This is why early life stages matter so much in marine science. They are the narrow doorway through which the future of a species must pass. When that doorway becomes harder to cross, the consequences can remain hidden until the absence becomes impossible to ignore. Some pteropods are called sea butterflies, and their shells are delicate. Pteropods are tiny open-ocean snails that seem almost dreamlike when seen alive. Many swim with wing-like lobes, fluttering through the water in a way that earned some species the name sea butterflies. Their shells, when present, are often thin, transparent, and exquisitely delicate. These are not heavy armored houses built for pounding surf. They are fragile structures suited to life in the water column, where buoyancy and lightness matter. That delicacy is part of their beauty, but also part of their vulnerability. A shell so fine can be especially sensitive to changes in ocean chemistry and other environmental pressures. What I find so captivating about pteropods is the contrast they offer with our usual image of shells. Here, the shell is not rugged beach architecture. It is almost glassy, airy, and ephemeral, part of the drifting life in open water. They expand the idea of what a shell can be, showing that protection in the sea sometimes takes a whispering, nearly weightless form. Their tiny shells matter because entire food webs depend on them. It is easy to dismiss a tiny shelled creature as ecologically minor, but pteropods and other small shell-bearing plankton can be foundational in marine food webs. They are eaten by a wide range of animals, including fish, seabirds, and larger predators that depend directly or indirectly on their abundance. That means the fate of these delicate shell makers reaches far beyond their own small bodies. If they decline, the effects can travel upward through the ecosystem, altering who gets fed and how energy moves through the sea. This is one of the most important lessons in shell biology. Size does not measure significance. A shell so small it could rest on a fingernail may help support creatures vastly larger than itself. The ocean runs on these hidden connections. Tiny drifting animals become meals, and meals become migrations, growth, and survival at higher levels. So when we talk about fragile planktonic shells, we are not speaking only about obscure organisms. We are speaking about the base of living chains. Mussel farms, oyster beds, and clam grounds rely on healthy shells. Shells are not just curiosities or fossils. They are central to modern food systems and coastal economies. Mussels, oysters, and clams support fisheries, aquaculture operations, and local traditions in many parts of the world. And all of those depend on animals being able to build and maintain sound shells. A weak shell means greater vulnerability to predators, handling stress, disease, and environmental hardship. In hatcheries and growing beds, even small shifts in shell quality can matter enormously because they affect survival at scale. This gives shell health immediate human relevance. Coastal jobs, harvests, and cultural practices can all be tied to whether marine animals can continue producing strong protective structures in changing waters. What makes this especially striking is how direct the link is. The chemistry of the sea reaches into the biology of the animal, and the biology of the animal reaches into the lives of people. A shell becomes more than an object of beauty. It becomes part of livelihood, food, and continuity. A healthy shell is a chemistry project built in living tissue. To look at a shell is to see the finished result, but not the complexity of what it took to make it. Building one requires precise control over ions, proteins, timing, and location inside living tissue. The animal must gather raw materials from its environment, move them into the right places, and regulate how crystals form so that the resulting structure has the needed shape and strength. This is not passive mineral coating. It is active biological engineering happening at the boundary between body and sea. What fascinates me about that is how much invisible management lies behind an object that appears effortless. A shell seems still and obvious, yet its construction depends on finely tuned chemical processes that can be disrupted by stress, poor conditions, or changing water chemistry. In that sense, every intact shell is proof that a living system successfully coordinated a complicated act of controlled mineralization. It is a chemistry project, yes, but also an act of biological discipline carried out with extraordinary precision. The mantle does the building, not the shell itself. A shell can seem like a self-contained object, almost as though it grows by its own internal logic once it exists. In reality, the true builder is the mantle, the living tissue that lies against the inside of the shell and controls its formation. The mantle secretes the proteins and minerals that create new layers, shape edges, repair damage, and determine much of the shell's final texture and architecture. Without that tissue, the shell is only a remnant. It cannot extend, maintain itself, or respond to the world. This matters because it reminds us that a shell is not separate from the animal in any deep sense. It is the product of an active bodily process, more like a continuing construction project than a finished container. I love that reversal. What looks like the most solid and permanent part turns out to depend entirely on something soft, thin, and alive. The apparent house is really the outward work of hidden flesh, built continuously by a tissue most people never see. Damage can sometimes be repaired while the animal is still alive. A broken shell is not always the end. If the animal survives the attack or accident, it can sometimes repair the damage from the inside, laying down new material where the wall has been chipped, cracked, or pierced. The process is not instant. It takes time, resources, and continued survival in a world that has already proved dangerous. Yet many shell bearers manage it. A crab's claw may have crushed the edge. A wave may have slammed the animal against rock. A predator may have nearly drilled through. If the soft body remains alive and the mantle can still work, rebuilding begins. That gives some old shells a strange dignity. They carry visible proof that disaster happened and was outlived. The shell becomes more than a defense. It becomes a scarred record of endurance. There is something deeply compelling about that. A shell can be wounded and still continue. It can return to the work of living while slowly patching its own broken walls. Repaired scars can leave a shell looking warped, thickened, or twisted. When a shell is repaired, it does not always return to perfect symmetry. New growth may be thicker than the original wall, slightly misaligned, or bent around the site of injury in ways that leave the whole structure looking distorted. To a collector, these shells can seem odd at first, almost defective. To a natural historian, they are some of the most interesting of all. They show survival written directly into form. A warped edge may mark the place where a predator almost succeeded. A thickened ridge may reveal where the animal reinforced weakness after a crack. A twisted curve may be the long aftermath of one brief, traumatic moment. In that sense, damage changes not just appearance, but biography. The shell keeps growing, yet it never fully forgets what happened. I find that remarkable because it makes the object feel almost narrative. It is no longer only a design from nature. It is a life interrupted, adapted, and carried forward in mineral memory. Some shells grow left-handed, and collectors treasure their rarity. Most spiral shells coil in the same direction for a given species, which is why the rare exceptions can feel so striking. A left-handed shell, often called sinistral, reverses the expected pattern, turning what should be familiar into something subtly uncanny. The opening falls on the opposite side. The whole spiral seems to lean the wrong way, and anyone who knows shells notices the difference immediately. These unusual forms are often prized by collectors because they are genuinely uncommon and visually arresting. Yet the fascination is more than rarity alone. A reversed shell reveals how tightly development is controlled and how dramatic the result can be when that control shifts. It is a tiny change with sweeping consequences for the final structure. What makes this so appealing is that the shell remains beautiful, but with a note of surprise. Nature has followed the same theme, then suddenly played it backward, creating an object that feels both correct and wonderfully improbable at once. Most snail shells coil one way, but rare reversals do happen. Shell coiling is not random. In most snail species, the direction is set by inherited developmental processes that guide how the body and shell grow from the earliest stages. That is why the overwhelming majority of individuals follow the same handed pattern. But every so often, a reversal appears. One snail develops with the opposite twist, and the result looks almost like a mirror image of the species standard. It is such a small shift in one sense, just a reversal of direction, yet it changes the animal's whole architecture. Organs, opening position, and shell orientation all follow that altered plan. What fascinates me is how a single developmental change can leave such a visible signature on the finished shell. It turns the familiar strange without making it monstrous. The shell still belongs clearly to its species, but it also carries a quiet defiance of expectation. That rarity gives it a special kind of beauty, the beauty of pattern interrupted by possibility. A reversed shell can make mating surprisingly difficult. A rare shell reversal may look like a collector's delight, but for the animal, it can be a serious complication. Many snails rely on body alignment during mating, and when one individual's shell coils the opposite way from the rest of the population, that alignment can become awkward or impossible. The bodies no longer meet in the expected positions. What seems like a small visual difference to us becomes a major mechanical barrier in the snail's life. This is one of those facts that makes evolution feel both elegant and unforgiving. A rare form can arise, survive, and even intrigue us, yet still struggle because it does not fit the mating geometry of the larger group. In some circumstances, such reversals could help isolate lineages over long timescales. In others, they simply leave an individual more alone than its appearance suggests. The shell becomes not just a house, but part of the body's social compatibility, shaping who can connect with whom in the quiet world of snails. Shells can host algae, worms, sponges, and hitchhiking barnacles. A shell is rarely just one creature's story. Once it exists in the sea, it can become a surface, a foothold, and a miniature habitat for other life. Algae may spread over it like living paint. Tiny worms may bore into it or attach tubes along its surface. Sponges can encrust it. Barnacles may settle and ride along wherever the owner goes. This turns the shell into something larger than armor. It becomes real estate. A moving animal may carry a whole little community without ever intending to. That added life can sometimes help with camouflage and sometimes create drag or extra burden. Either way, the shell becomes a meeting place where different organisms overlap. I love that idea because it makes the shell feel less like a closed object and more like a stage. What seems at first to be a solitary form is often already inhabited by other lives, each using its surface for survival in a crowded and opportunistic sea. Even after death, an empty shell keeps serving new life. A shell does not stop mattering when its original owner is gone. In many habitats, an empty shell immediately becomes opportunity. Hermit crabs may move in. Small fish can shelter beside or within it. Worms, algae, and encrusting organisms may colonize the surface. Sediment may collect around it, turning it into a refuge for tiny animals that need a hard boundary in an otherwise soft landscape. What was once personal protection becomes shared infrastructure. That continuing usefulness is one of the most beautiful things about shells. They do not vanish into irrelevance after death. They remain active participants in the ecosystem, offering cover, anchor points, and surfaces for new growth. In that sense, a shell's life extends beyond the animal that made it. It keeps working in the world. I find that profoundly moving. The shell is not just a remnant. It is a handoff. One creature builds it, another borrows it, another settles on it, and the sea keeps finding fresh uses for what was left behind. Octopuses have been seen using shells as portable shelter. An octopus is famous for intelligence, flexibility, and problem-solving. So perhaps it should not surprise us that some species use shells in remarkably inventive ways. In certain cases, octopuses have been observed gathering shell halves or other hard objects, carrying them along the sea floor, and assembling them into temporary shelter when needed. The animal moves awkwardly while transporting the pieces, then quickly arranges them into a protective enclosure once it pauses. It is one of the most vivid examples of a shell's second life. A structure built by one animal becomes a tool and refuge for a completely different creature with no shell of its own. What makes the scene unforgettable is the sense of foresight. The octopus is not merely hiding under what happens to be nearby. It is carrying potential protection across open ground for later use. That turns the shell into equipment, chosen and deployed by a mind that recognizes shelter as something that can be planned in advance. Cuttlefish carry an internal shell called a cuttlebone. Not all shells stay on the outside. In cuttlefish, the shell has retreated inward and become an internal structure known as the cuttlebone. This light, porous form helps the animal control buoyancy, allowing it to rise and sink through the water with delicate precision. That is what makes it so fascinating. The shell has not disappeared. It has changed jobs. Instead of serving mainly as armor, it now acts more like a buoyancy device hidden inside a fast, intelligent hunter. The transformation reveals something important about shell evolution. A structure that begins as external protection can be repurposed when a different kind of life demands speed, maneuverability, and control in open water. The cuttlefish keeps the shell's advantages while shedding some of its old burdens. Seen that way, the cuttlebone is not a reduced leftover. It is a reinvention. A shell once meant for defense becomes part of a graceful internal system that helps one of the sea's most captivating predators hover almost effortlessly. Squid have reduced shells hidden inside their bodies. A squid moves with such speed and fluidity that it hardly seems like a shell-bearing animal at all. Yet deep in its body lies a reminder of shelled ancestry. In many squid, the shell has been reduced to a slender internal structure, often called a pen or gladius. It no longer surrounds the animal, and it offers nothing like the protection of a snail shell or clam shell. Instead, it provides support, helping maintain body shape while allowing the flexibility and rapid movement that define squid life. This is evolution, stripping away what no longer serves and keeping what still matters. The shell does not vanish completely. It becomes lean, hidden, and specialized. I find that especially intriguing because it changes how we think about shells. They are not only external ornaments or armor. They can become internal frameworks, ghostly traces of history carried inside modern bodies. A squid racing through dark water still bears the memory of shelled ancestors, but now in a far more aerodynamic form. Slugs prove that some shell bearers almost lost the shell entirely. A slug can seem like the opposite of a shelled creature, all softness and exposure, moving through the world with no obvious hard protection at all. Yet slugs are descended from ancestors that carried shells, and many still preserve traces of that history. In some, the shell has become a tiny internal plate. In others, it has been reduced almost beyond recognition. This makes slugs fascinating not because they lack a shell, but because they show what happens when an old structure is gradually abandoned. The trade-offs are enormous. Losing a heavy external shell can allow movement into tighter spaces, reduced weight, and different ecological strategies. But it also leaves the animal more vulnerable to drying out and predation. That tension gives slugs a kind of evolutionary drama. They are not shellies by accident. They are descendants of shell bearers that took a different path. Their bodies are a reminder that even one of nature's great inventions can be diminished when a new way of living begins to outweigh old defenses. Sea slugs traded heavy armor for chemistry, camouflage, and speed. Sea slugs are among the clearest examples of what can happen when a lineage moves beyond reliance on a sturdy shell. Many nudibranchs and their relatives have given up heavy external armor and instead survive using very different tools. Some steal chemical defenses from the prey they eat and store those compounds in their own tissues. Others advertise toxicity with bold colors, or else blend so perfectly with sponges, algae, or corals that they almost disappear. Freed from the burden of a large shell, they can move with more flexibility and sometimes exploit habitats where rigid armor would be awkward. What captivates me about them is that they do not look like diminished shell bearers. They look like a radical alternative. The old fortress has been replaced by chemistry, deception, and precision living. In that sense, they expand the story of shells by showing what comes after shells. They prove that losing armor does not always mean losing sophistication. Sometimes it means inventing an entirely new style of survival. Some shell-bearing animals glow under ultraviolet light in stunning colors. A shell that looks ordinary in daylight can become astonishing under ultraviolet light. In some shell-bearing animals, pigments or structural compounds fluoresce, producing vivid greens, reds, blues, or other glowing colors that seem to come from nowhere. This is one of those hidden layers of nature that feels almost theatrical. The shell carries visual information that human eyes never notice under normal conditions, yet under the right light it suddenly blazes into view. Scientists are still learning why this happens in particular cases, and whether it has biological significance or is simply a side effect of shell chemistry and structure. Either way, the result is mesmerizing. It reminds us that shells are richer than they appear at first glance. They may hold optical surprises that lie dormant until the world is lit differently. A shell is already a record of growth and environment. Under ultraviolet light, it becomes something else as well, a concealed display waiting for the right kind of night to reveal it. Others vanish into reefs because their shells mimic rock perfectly. Not every shell seeks attention. Some are so effectively matched to their surroundings that they seem to disappear against reef stone, rubble, or encrusted surfaces. Their colors may mimic algae-covered rock, their textures may resemble rough coral, and their outlines may break up so completely that a predator glancing past sees nothing worth noticing. This is camouflage at its most convincing. A shell does not need to be bright or elaborate when invisibility is the better defense. What fascinates me is how total the illusion can become. The shell is not merely similar to the reef. It can feel absorbed into it, as though the animal has borrowed the landscape's own appearance and wrapped itself inside. That makes the reef a place of visual deception, full of creatures hidden in plain sight. A collector or diver may overlook them repeatedly before suddenly realizing how many were there all along. The shell becomes less an object on the reef than a way of becoming part of the reef itself. The familiar seashell sound is not the ocean, but trapped room noise. Holding a shell to your ear feels like listening to the sea itself, especially if you found that shell beside the surf. The soft rushing sound seems so convincing that people have repeated the idea for generations. Yet what you are hearing is not a stored piece of ocean. It is the sound of the surrounding environment, including room noise and the movement of air, being shaped and amplified by the shell's interior. In a way, the shell is acting like a resonant chamber, emphasizing some frequencies while muting others. That explanation does not ruin the magic for me. It changes the magic. The shell is not replaying the past. It is transforming the present. A quiet room becomes wave-like because the shell's curves make ordinary noise feel larger, softer, and more mysterious than it otherwise would. That is such a lovely twist. The shell does not contain the sea. It teaches your ear to hear the world differently, and for a moment, that difference sounds like an ocean. Still, a shell's curves shape that whisper into something haunting. Even once you know the sound in a shell is not the ocean itself, the experience remains uncanny. That is because the shell's interior is not neutral. Its curves, chambers, and openings selectively reinforce parts of the sound around you, turning ordinary ambient noise into a hushed, rushing murmur with an almost tidal character. In effect, the shell edits the world's noise and gives it a new emotional quality. That transformation is what makes the effect linger in memory. A shell can make a room sound deeper than it is. It can pull a soft ghost of surf from the air where there is none. I think that is part of why people love the experience even after learning the physics. The explanation does not flatten the wonder. It reveals a subtler one. The shell is not lying. It is interpreting. It takes random noise and shapes it into something that feels ancient, distant, and strangely alive. A mineral curve becomes an acoustical artist, and the result can feel genuinely haunting. Shell collecting helped launch early natural history and museum science. Long before biology became a modern discipline, shells were among the natural objects that drew people into careful observation, comparison, and classification. Collectors gathered them not only because they were beautiful, but because their forms were so varied, durable, and portable. Cabinets of shells became part of the culture of curiosity that fed early natural history. People compared shapes, noted origins, organized specimens, and tried to understand relationships among living things through what they could hold in their hands. In that sense, shells helped train the habits of science. They encouraged looking closely, naming carefully, and preserving examples for study and public display. Many early museums and collections gave shells a central place for exactly these reasons. I love that connection because it turns the shell from an object of private fascination into part of the foundation of shared knowledge. A beach find led to a cabinet, the cabinet led to comparison, and comparison helped build the disciplines that would later transform how humans understand life. Some shells have inspired sacred symbols, architecture, and art for centuries. Shells have never belonged only to biology. Their spirals, fans, ridges, and luminous interiors have carried symbolic and artistic power for centuries across many cultures. A shell can suggest birth, pilgrimage, protection, or the sea itself. It can appear in sacred imagery, decorative carving, jewelry, painting, and ceremonial design. Architects have borrowed shell curves for niches, vaults, staircases, and ornamental forms because the shapes feel at once organic and ordered. Artists return to shells for much the same reason. They offer geometry with life still in it, structure softened by growth and time. What makes this so compelling is that the shell's beauty is not imposed by us. It was already there, built for an animal's survival, and yet human minds keep finding meaning in it, beyond that first purpose. The shell becomes a bridge between nature and imagination. It is at once a real object from the shore and a form that can carry reverence, memory, elegance, and metaphor through human culture. A shell is part shelter, part machine, part diary, part monument. The more closely you look at shells, the harder they become to categorize. They are shelter, of course, because they protect soft living bodies. But they are also machines, shaped to resist force, manage buoyancy, anchor an animal, or streamline movement through water and sand. They are diaries because growth lines, scars, chemistry, and repaired damage preserve the story of a life and an environment. And they are monuments because they can outlast the animal, remain in the landscape, enter the fossil record, or pass into human hands as treasured objects. What I love most about shells is this layering of meanings. Nothing about them is simple for long. A shell begins as practical biology and ends up touching geology, history, art, and memory. It is one of those rare natural forms that grows larger in significance the more you study it. The closer you come, the less it feels like a single thing, and the more it feels like a whole world held in miniature. Once you notice shells, every shoreline becomes a museum of living design. At first, a beach may seem like a place of scattered leftovers, attractive perhaps, but random. Then, something changes. You begin to recognize spirals, hinges, scars, textures, colors, drilled holes, growth lines, and worn edges. Suddenly, the whole shore opens. Every shell becomes evidence of a different strategy for living. One resisted waves. One buried into sand. One recorded ancient water in its chemistry. One became money, music, or fossil stone. One survived an attack. One was borrowed by something else after death. That is why shells are so captivating. They train the eye to see design everywhere. A shoreline stops being a simple boundary between land and sea and becomes a gallery of solutions shaped by millions of years of trial and survival. I think that is the deepest charm of them. They change not only what you look at, but how you look. Once you really notice shells, the beach is never ordinary again. It becomes a museum with the tide still moving through it. Thank you for joining me for this journey through the world of shells. Tonight, we wandered along ancient shorelines and living reefs. We traced spirals shaped by growth and mathematics. We followed creatures that build their own armor, others that borrow it, and some that left it behind in strange and beautiful ways. We drifted through warm tropical seas, deep time, fossil mountains, bright tide pools, and beaches where every fragment carries a story. We found shells that became tools, shells that became money, shells that became stone, and shells that still hold the memory of vanished oceans. And perhaps that is the wonder of them. A shell can be so small, so easy to miss, yet inside it lives an entire world of chemistry, survival, history, and design. A curve on the sand can lead to ancient seas. A broken fragment can speak of predators, storms, and time. A shining spiral can carry the quiet work of a living animal, building beauty one layer at a time. Now, As this journey comes to an end, let the shoreline grow still in your mind. Let the waves soften. Let the scattered shells rest where they are, pale beneath moonlight, washed smooth by water and time. And if you're still awake and would like to continue drifting with me, there will be another video waiting for you on the screen. You're warmly invited to stay a little longer. And if you enjoyed this sleepy exploration, you might like, subscribe, or leave a comment below. It helps this little channel reach other curious minds looking for a calm place to rest. But for now, let your breathing slow. Let your thoughts settle, and let the last light fade softly from the shore. Sleep well, and good night.